Hello, I'm David Breeden. I'm the Senior Minister at First Unitarian Society in Minneapolis, and we are a historically humanist congregation. This is Coffee and Wisdom. When we look at some ideas in philosophy and religion and where they came from and where they may be going. This week we have been looking at dreams and asking the question, what do dreams tell us, religion and the subconscious? We started out the week with looking at the ancient ideas of dreams, that they were divination, divine prophecies for human beings. Then moving into the art world in the Romantic era with the artists wanting to access the subconscious, but well before psychology as a field of study really took off. Yesterday, we talked about Freud, who, of course, is one of the colossi of the dream world and the subconscious. And today, want to end up the week with his student, but someone who began to disagree with the teacher, and that is Carl Jung, 1875, 1961. This Time magazine really kind of summarized the early understandings of Jung anyway, exploring the soul, a challenge to Freud. Well, yesterday we learned that Freud thought that dreams and religion were kind of the same thing, which is that they were wish fulfillment, and that especially with religion, we would, as a human race, outgrow that childhood dependence upon religion. Carl Jung didn't think that. He thought that religions were manifestations of the subconscious and that we could re-access the subconscious and manipulate it, if you will, by going into various states, as we'll see. But first off, this is his definition of dreams. Dreams are impartial, spontaneous projects of the unconscious psyche outside the control of the will. They are pure nature. They show us the unvarnished, natural truth and are therefore fitted, as nothing else is, to give us back an attitude that accords with our basic human nature when our consciousness has strayed too far from its foundations and run into an impasse. So it is revealing to us, dreams are revealing to us, the work we need to do to get back into exploring our own conscious. So that's the idea. All right. So Jung defined a dream as a spontaneous self-portrayal in symbolic form of the actual situation in the unconscious. So he's very, very strongly into this idea that dreams are symbols, and we have to look at the symbols within the dreams to discover what our unconscious is trying to tell us. Nights through dreams tell the myths forgotten by the day, he says. And indeed, part of his idea is that our unconscious contains ancient archetypes that we can access through dream and then use those and manipulate those as we work on our own personalities in life. As far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being. It may even be assumed that just as the unconscious affects us, so the increase in our consciousness affects the unconscious. The idea of this being more than mere being, the light and the darkness of mere being, that is, of course, a reference to the existential philosopher Heidegger, and the idea of being and time, that this is how we manifest ourselves in the world by understanding our being and the times in which we live. So, some of the central ideas that Carl Jung gave to us that you still hear a lot about today. One is introvert extrovert. Now, this started in a totally different area for him, but in 1921, he published on the idea of introverts and extroverts. And next time you hear someone refer to that concept, think, where would we be without Carl Jung? Because we use that concept constantly to talk about human personality. Another of his great ideas is archetypes. Now, of course, archetypes have been around for a long time as a concept. Various artists have tried to tap into the idea of archetypes over time, but Carl Jung really brings that to the fore as something that needs to be a practice of something that we notice. the collective unconscious, again, the spiritus mundi, as it was called in the 19th century, with Yeats and the Golden Dawn and Madame Blavatsky. He is really trying to bring this more into a scientific understanding of what the collective unconscious can tell us, and is there one? And then the process of individuation that we still talk about today. And this is one of his illustrations. One of the amazing things about Jung is his notebooks. And he would try to draw his dream images. We've discussed the fact that many artists do this, and the fact that you keep a dream journal and try to write down or draw these ideas helps to remember them. And that's one of the very interesting things about this process. Now, this is a very simplified way of looking at archetypes, but one of the easiest ways into this concept is to look at these types, symbolic types. And so the ruler, the creator, the sage, the innocent, the explorer, the rebel, the hero, the wizard, the jester, regular guy or gal, lover, caregiver, and on around. Now, all of these people, all of these archetypes can be embraced by us and to define ourselves, but we need to do this consciously, is what Jung is really saying. We will do one of these archetypes, whether we know it or not. The question is, how much are we in control of that? Because he thought the human psyche looked a lot like this. Now, we remember Freud, the id, ego, and superego. Of course, Jung is coming out of that idea and knew it very well. He was a personal friend of Freud, at least for a while. And so he knows these ideas very well. He's going to do them a little bit differently, however. So this is his layered model of the human psyche. So we have up here the persona, the mask, that's a Greek word for mask, then the ego. So instead of a superego, he's seeing that we have a persona, but wait, there's more to this. And then below this line, the unconscious, the shadow self is that which if we ignore what we are, who we are, we begin to act out in ways that are non-social and damaging to our own psyches. Then here's the archetypes and here's the self. So notice that what the idea here is that we have a self and we latch onto unconsciously archetypes to form our personalities. And after we do that, we run a great danger of falling into our shadow side of any of these particular archetypes. But what we have to do is get this into our conscious level of thinking so that we can discover how to manipulate and change these things. So this is a little illustration of how he conceptualizes this. So we have the collective unconscious here at the bottom. That's the bottom of the sea, the unconscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the conscious mind. So what we're doing by looking at our dreams is getting into the subconscious mind, yes, the immediate effects of our lives on us, but also we can tap in, if we're careful about it and work on it, the collective unconscious. And how do we do that? Well, by looking at our dreams. This is a little saying, art intuitively apprehends coming changes in the collective unconscious. So, hey, what artist wouldn't like to be told that the artists of the world, the poets and the writers and the sculptors, etc., are tapping into this great collective unconsciousness and bringing that out and showing us how the world will be changing and how we can change the world. So a poet like Shelley, for example, will say that the poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the race, for example. Again, back to the idea of his drawings, one of the things that Jung does a lot of is draw his dreams. Now, this one is from a work called The Red Book. This was not known for many, many years. It was people knew, disciples of his, students knew that he had done this in the 1920s and 30s, but he didn't release it during his lifetime. But it has now been printed. It is quite expensive because guess what? It has a lot of color illustrations in it. And what you see here is his idea of a very, very common idea of the human subconscious, which is that there is a snake holding up the world, and this is then would be the world tree. That's Yggdrasil, if you are a fan of Norse myth, and it would be the background behind the Garden of Eden story with Adam and Eve and the apple and the serpent, of course. So there's some kind of snake coiled around the roots of the world, and the tree coming up, which is where we live, somewhere on this out in the open air. That's the idea, anyway. Another of his ideas, as I mentioned, and we can't do justice to any of this, but it gives you some thoughts for the day, is individuation. Another set of his notebooks that were published during his lifetime are called the Black Books. So there's the Red Book that came out after his death, big and thick and expensive, and the Black Books, which are a series of notebooks that were published. And you see here is his handwriting about his dreams and his way of dealing with the symbology that's going on in his dreams. Still today, a lot of therapists use the idea of the mandalas, which are a Hindu invention and also occur in Native American materials. And he was very big on the idea of the mandala and how this circle, this wholeness, could be used to discover the subconscious. So, individuation, and this is a quote, somewhere right at the bottom of one's own being, one generally does know where one should go and what one should do. But there are times when the clown we call I behaves in such a distracting fashion that the inner voice cannot make its presence felt. This is kind of the essence of how Jung talked about, and Jungian psychologists still talk about, dealing with the stuff of our present lives and probably not going so well, maybe, and how we can get off that track and onto another one. And what the clown, Jung usually calls it the jester or the trickster. And how do we get back to our true self that lies behind those various archetypes? So that's the basic idea. So we have, in the old days, way back, the divination idea of dreams, that God is talking to us and prophesying, all the way through to Carl Jung, who's still very much read, and you can go to a Jungian psychologist today and talk about the archetypes that dreams are reminding us of, and how we can tap into our unconscious, subconscious minds. And so it's kind of gone full circle in that way, and for a lot of people anyway. So thanks for listening this week. Coming up on Sunday, 10:30 a.m. Central Time, Ingrates and Other Opposites. One of the assistant ministers at First Unitarian Society will be talking, Reverend Jim Fody, going into our Thanksgiving holiday. We won't be having Coffee and Wisdom on Thursday or Friday because of the holiday. On Wednesday night, however, we will be doing Bibles and Beer at 7 p.m. And what should we do, of course, with Thanksgiving coming up, but go to probably one of the most famous feasts in the Hebrew scripture, that is Belshazzar's feast, in which he is weighed in the balance and found wanting. One of our cliches that we hear still, and the other is he sees the handwriting on the wall. So we will dine with poor Mr. Belshazzar right before our Thanksgiving feast and see how he did not deal with his with a great deal of gratitude, shall we say, as we look at these things next week. Thanks for joining in. You can help us out by going to firstunitarian.org/donate or PayPal. And I'll see you next week when we'll talk a little bit about gratitude. Thanks.